Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Tuesday edition of the Orange and Brown Talk podcast, the Hey Mary Kay edition of the podcast. Our Football Insider subscribers, as you can imagine, Mary Kay had a whole bunch of questions to ask following that performance by the Browns on Sunday in Miami. And this has sort of been something I think a lot of people are wondering. Look, everybody wants to put blame everywhere, and everyone's pointing fingers in all sorts of different directions, and I think we will probably touch on everyone in this podcast. But let's just start with this question from Anise Barner in Toledo, Ohio. She asks, "Hey, Mary Kay, how much blame does Andrew Berry get for the Browns being 3-6?
Well, I think everyone in the organization does need to share in some of the blame for this right now. And I think where they have to put some of it on the personnel department is they have to look at how they assembled this roster, how they assembled this defense, and ask themselves, did they set themselves up properly to be able to stop the run? Did they do enough at the defensive tackle position and at the linebacker position? And do they need to change their philosophy a little bit? They're sort of built for speed, not necessarily to stop the run. So I do think they need to take a look at that. I also think that there are a number of guys that they felt were going to take big, huge leaps in their second seasons. The Jordan Elliott's, the Jacob Phillips, who he's now out for the season. There were a lot of guys that they just expected to pop, and that hasn't happened yet. We'll see down the stretch how it goes, but, they have not gotten the production out of some of their young guys. And, a number of them are draft picks.
Yeah, and I think the discussion kind of starts with that, right? Giving guys opportunities and how much of it was, nobody's going to blame this front office for saying, oh, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah is going to make a leap in year 2, right? Everybody was feeling good about him. I think most people felt like Grant Delpit deserved a shot to kind of continue his development. He missed his rookie year. Last year was essentially his rookie season, and he showed some signs that maybe he could be something. The way they approached that defensive tackle position, though, with Jordan Elliott, who really didn't show a lot in his first 2 years. He wasn't a full-time player, but he did play. You go get Taven Bryan. It was really just sort of a shoulder shrug at that defensive tackle position. I think there were guys that they counted on that maybe didn't necessarily merit at least not having a backup plan. And I think they're paying for that a little bit, with Elliott, probably with, some of the, even on the offensive side, Anthony Schwartz. You can just go through the list. Demetric Felton. There's some draft picks they've relied on who maybe he should have at least had a backup plan for.
Yeah, and then also, I think they really expected Perion Winfrey to contribute a significant amount this season, and he has not been able to do that for one reason or another. He had some maturity issues early on, just trying to find his way in the pro game and how to be a professional. And he was a healthy scratch, basically. Now, he was ill throughout the week, so this one was sort of a combo scratch, a little bit health, a little bit of, performance. But I think Perion Winfrey was someone that they hoped would be part of the defensive tackle rotation and be making an impact by this point in the season. And, that wouldn't have been too much to ask. I mean, some of their other younger guys are making a considerable impact and actually overachieving. I'm talking about Martin Emerson Jr. and their 3rd-round cornerback and Isaiah Thomas, their 7th-round defensive end. So, it's not too much to ask a rookie defender to step in and do some great things, but it just hasn't happened at some of the positions. Having said that, there are still a lot of young guys on this defense. Even when you talk about a Grant Delpit, this really would have been Grant's first year as a full-time starter from the jump, right? Last year was his first season playing after the Achilles, and he wasn't really a full-time starter. This year he was called upon to be a full-time starter. Same thing with Jacob, again, out for the season, and Jordan, first time that he would have been a full-time starter. So even though some of these guys have been around for a little while, they haven't, just been relied on to be the guy at their position until this season. And I think it was taking the first half of the season for some of them to come up that learning curve. And then in other situations, you just flat out lost a guy for the year. We're talking about Anthony Walker Jr. and then eventually Jacob Phillips, his replacement. So lots of lack of continuity on the defense. It hasn't helped. Denzel Ward missing 3 games with a concussion, Jadeveon Clowney, Myles Garrett. It's just been a very disjointed defensive performance.
And then a follow-up question here, just sticking on Andrew Berry. Hey, Mary Kay, is Andrew Berry too patient with waiting for draft picks to develop?
Well, they do give their guys the benefit of the doubt. There's no question about that. And one perfect example of that right now, of course, is Anthony Schwartz. They're giving him all the time that he needs. I get many emails about him. I see a lot of things on social media about him, and he takes so much heat. I mean, people are basically done with him. But the Browns are not done with him. And we'll see. We'll see if that's the right strategy or not. This is probably, mostly a lost season for Anthony Schwartz. He's going to have to show something to come back next year and prove to them that he can be a player. It hasn't happened so far, and we'll find out probably by next year if Andrew Berry is right and if he's hanging on too long.